y'all. Welcome back to another episode of Chats from the Blog Cabin. You know, where I invite people virtually into the blog cabin to chat about life. And today I'm chatting with a very dear friend who is a very dear online friend. We have yet to meet up in person, even though you've been at writing conferences the next state away, and I wish and hope I can make it, and then something comes up and I'm never able to make it. But you may remember Gail Priest actually talked about her in one of my former episodes. And so, Tawdra, tell us about yourself.
Well, I am Tawdra Kandle, and I have been an author for, I'm going to be celebrating my 10th anniversary as an author this December, which feels a little impossible. I have over 100 books in active release, and everything I write is romance. I span from contemporary to paranormal to erotic romance. So that's where I am, and I live in Central Florida with my family.
And let's talk about the family, because your family, I think the reason why I became as close to you and Mandy as well, because Mandy Stevens has been on the show, is that I actually was in the promotional book tour group when you had it. And I was going through the episode of losing my dad in hospice. And you mentioned, and Mandy both mentioned, that you had both gone through that. And I think that's where I really got to really cling to you and love on you and know you more, is because you had similar circumstances.
Yeah. We've, my husband and I have lost all four of our parents. My mother-in-law passed away when we were still fairly young. We only had the two kids at the time. And my husband always tells people now that he was the world's worst hospice patient family, member. He was only 28 years old at the time. And it was really hard. We had lived away for a long time, and we had just moved back when his mother passed away. So it was a very, very tough transition. But, the way that God works, he later went to seminary, and we didn't know what he was going to do after he got out. And he ended up in hospice ministry, which he thought, this is the last place I belong. But, so he did. He was a professional hospice chaplain for about 4 years, and then he moved into pastoral, ministry for a while. What am I thinking? Parish ministry for a while, and that was fine. But he really knew that his heart lay with people who were going through these times of transition, and when he would. There was, somebody in the parish who would need that kind of care, he would just drop everything and spend as much time as he could with them. And that wasn't always understood. There's different priorities. So eventually we ended up, he created his own ministry, or with the help of God, I should say, he created his own ministry called the Community Chaplain. And so that's basically what he does now. He does most of his work in senior care facilities, nursing homes, independent living, assisted living, memory units. He just seems to have a touch with it, and he does funerals. There are so many people out there right now who don't have any kind of church family or whatever, and so the funeral homes know. They call him and they'll say, "We have this family," and he probably does between 10 and 20 funerals a month. So, and it's been a great ministry, because people really need that kind of care at that time. And it's very cool for me to be on the other side and listen to him talking and thinking, wow, we've really come a long way. So, yeah.
Clear my mind. You write erotica romance, and he's a pastor. That must be interesting.
Well, I always say I was a writer before he was a minister, because technically I published my first book the December after he graduated from seminary, but I had been writing long before then. And, it wasn't, I started out at first in young adult, but it just turned out that I liked adult romance, and I don't write as much erotic romance as I once did. But my books all tend to be a little steamy. they tend to be a little bit on the steamy side. I'm not a sweet romance girl. So, but it's been cool. We've had situations where I've had a reader readers who were in the hospital or, happened to be around us and needed a visit. And we would go, and my husband always says, you get 2 for 1. You get your favorite romance author and you get to have me come and pray over you. So, it works.
That is so cool. I mean, because I would think a lot of people would say, well, that's not, you probably got a lot of pushback sometimes when people find out what you do and what your husband does.
Yeah, I mean, we were only in parish ministry for about 2.5 years. And at that time, people really we didn't advertise it, that much. We didn't, we had a couple of instances where people knew that I was an author, and we had a couple church ladies say, well, why don't you have your books in the church library? Not that kind of book. No, not that kind of book at all. And yeah, so actually at the assisted living place where he does his service there every week now, they have asked me to bring my books, and they shop them around, they'll pass them around the whole place. And the one older lady came up to my husband after a service and said, Father Clint, you are a very lucky man.
I wonder how many of them have said, is this based on your relationship?
Nobody has asked me, but yeah. It's, people are much more tolerant than what you think. It's I've waited for a little bit of pushback, but people are actually usually pretty good about it. So yeah.
I love that. So we're going to have to take a brief commercial, and then we'll be right back with talking more about how you get your inspiration for your books. Okay? So you ready?
Good.
Do you feel betrayed by life, your body, or by someone that you love? You are not alone, and you are not weak or overly emotional for feeling the way that you do. Betrayal is one of the most overwhelmingly painful experiences to navigate because it strikes at the core of who you are and what you are worth. No matter how gutted you feel, there is hope. You can flourish, not in spite of your experience, but because of it. I know. After 23 years of marriage, my world was shattered when I found out that my husband had been cheating on me with 5 different women for 15 years. I lost everything that day, my identity, my worth, and the future I had worked so hard to create. While it was a long and arduous journey back to myself, today I know who I am, what I want, and I am happier and more confident than I ever was before. I've got what I call naked self-worth, which is the ability to just see, know, and love yourself for who you are, not for what you accomplish or for who you are in relation to others. No matter what has shattered your heart, if you're ready to get clear on who you are, what you want, and to learn how good life really can be, then Life Choreography is for you. Even if you feel too old or are too busy because you have kids at home and you're in charge of everything, Life Choreography is a comprehensive 5-month, 5-step program that empowers you to strip out of your labels, roles, and scripts, and to reveal yourself as you are, not as you think you should be. To learn more, go to nakedselfworth.com and download your free guide that shows you how to untangle yourself from the past, reclaim your sexy, and start re-choreographing life on your own terms so you can love and be loved for exactly who you most authentically are.
And we are back. It's so amazing that it says reclaim your sexy, and we're talking about romance novels. Where do you get your inspiration for your novels?
A little bit of every place. I have a bunch of girlfriends, and we always have this idea of playing a game called What If. So we would be out in a restaurant, and we would each pick somebody, sitting around us, and then we'd spin a story like, oh, did you see, those two? This is what's happening with them. Had nothing to do with reality. They were probably just poor innocent bystanders. And that is what I tend to do. I'll hear something, or I'll see a situation or whatever, and I'll, my mind just starts to spin it and think, well, what if this happened? What if that happened? How would this character react? How would this character behave? How would she feel? How would he feel? Some of it is inspired by people I know. One of my best-selling books is a sports romance, a series, and it was actually inspired by a situation that I knew, like a love triangle. Now I took a little bit further, and I made it play out in my way, which it did not in real life. And then one of my favorite inspiration stories is my book 50 Frogs, which is actually every situation in there happened to one of my children. So it's a girl who has been broken up with, and she is a writer, and she decides she's going to her aunt tells her aunt, who is actually based on Gail Priest, which talk back to that, right? She told her, you have to kiss 50 frogs before you find your prince. And so she starts going on all these first dates and having a lot of interesting situations, and they all happen to one or the other of my children. So, a few details were tweaked to protect the innocent, but
of course.
Yes.
So does Gail know that
absolutely. We were actually on our way back from Indie Book Fest the year that the year of the hurricane. The one year we were doing Indie Book Fest, and it happened right in the middle of a hurricane here in Florida, and I was driving her to my house. She had a little time before her flight, and so I drove her to my house. And as we were doing it, we were making that drive, and my one daughter was in the back seat, and there was a turtle in the middle of the road right around the corner from my house. So we stopped, and we were trying to move this turtle toward the lake. And but every time we would go for him, he would crawl under my car. And as I was trying to move the car backwards, the turtle was moving with it. And this very attractive young man came out to help us. And Gail leaned into the car and said to my daughter, get out and introduce yourself. And so this became it became the impetus for this story about this girl, this young woman in the book who has to kiss 50 frogs. And that story is in there. And that is the guy who she ends up with. And that book is just about to come out on audiobook very shortly, probably within the next couple of weeks. So it's so fun. I love it.
It sounds like it's fun. I'm definitely going to have to get that one, because that sounds like it's really fun. And the fact that I've interviewed Gail, and I've known Gail online, I've not met her in person again, but knowing her personality, I'm going to know that she's going to be wide open. Well, let's talk about that, because you mentor a lot of writers. When you were doing the promotional book tour, you guys mentored a lot of writers. Let's talk about how you got into that.
I think it just kind of came naturally. We would have people come and ask us, when PBT was in its infancy, the indie publishing movement had really just begun too. I'm in one of the very first classes of indie writers. And so we had a lot of people who were still feeling their own way and trying to figure out what to do. And, I always credit Mandy had not written a full book at that point, but she knew so much because she had been working in this field. So, she said, this is what you need. You need a website. You need a newsletter. I mean, she set me up with MailChimp for the first time, and I had not an earthly clue what to do with it. I just looked at it like, okay, well, here it is. I don't know. And so, I learned very quickly that if I did not teach myself, I would never know what was, how to best serve myself. So I really educated myself on the business side as well as the craft side of the business. And it was very cool to have different people coming up and being able to say, okay, this is what we can do for you. This is what you should be doing. And it's just been a very positive thing to nurture people as they're they're kind of making their dreams come true. And Gail was one of my favorites because I had known her before, and she had been my daughter's English teacher during her senior year of high school, which was a very turbulent time in my family because my father had just died, and then my mother was sick, and my mother ended up dying right before Devin's graduation. So Gail was there for my daughter during a time that she really needed somebody, and they're still close, and Gail will always be, part of our family. So when she said to me, "Oh, I have these books," and I first read Annie, I just knew that those books had to come to life. So that's been fun, and it's amazing to me because she came to me not knowing social media, not knowing anything, and she was just. I told her some things, but she took the bull by the horns and she made it happen. And she, one of Gail's things is to step out of your story. She used to have these little, we used to call them in our house, Ms. Gailisms, because Devin would come home, my oldest daughter would come home with, well, Ms. Gail said today this, and one of the things was stepping out of your story. So if your story is, I'm too old to do this, or I can't do that, and Gail would challenge you to say, well, that's your story. You need to step out of it and see what happens. So I was really proud of her. I continue to be proud of her. She is amazing.
Well, she did give you props on the interview with us. I mean, when her and I interviewed, she gave you a lot of props, and it was like full circle for me because that's when I first started blogging. Is I found the promotional book tours, and so I was doing a lot of books, reading and reviewing, and and then when she contacted me again and said, "Hey, I'm trying to beef up my Amazon pages. Can I use one excerpt for your review?" And I'm like, absolutely, if you will come on and let me be interviewed. And I think this was like the very first in-person interview that we did because we were actually live when we did it. And she was like, I'm so sorry. She was like, oh man. I said, but it was like full circle for me as well.
Yeah. It's I'm so glad that I'm still in touch with so many of the bloggers and the early readers from those days. You are certainly one of our, you were one of our first and most treasured and dependable bloggers back in the day. And earlier this year, we lost one of our very steadfast bloggers. And actually the event that you did not make it to because you had a conflict, Nikki did come to, and I had no idea that was the last time I was going to see her. And it was just heartbreaking for me because she had been there from the beginning. So, we really do, that's been, for me, that's been my joy in this whole journey, 10 years of meeting people who have, enriched my life and who have, just been amazing supporters and, great about sharing and reading. So I'm very, very blessed.
You said you've been writing for 10 years. So how many books total have you? Because I tried to grab some to throw them up and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to direct everybody to your Amazon page because that's a lot.
Yeah. There's over 100. I am not my 100th book. I said I published my 100th book last December on my 9th anniversary. And I mean, it was kind of technically true. It might have actually been the 102nd, 101st, or 103rd, somewhere around in there, depending on box sets and whatever. But so I went back to my very first series and my very first characters to publish my 100th book last year. And that was a novella called Snowflakes on the Sand. So I took all my paranormal people and brought them back together. And that was super fun. And I actually write, the paranormals are under now my pen name Tawdra Kandle, and my erotic is under Tessa Kent. So all of my pen names have the TK. And I don't hide it. This is just so that people know if they pick up a Tessa Kent, it's going to be really hot and steamy, and if they pick up a Tawdra Kandle, there's going to be a paranormal element in it. And if it's a Tawdra Kandle, then it's contemporary. So I have somewhere over I'm probably up around 112 to 115 right now. I don't know. I haven't counted. It's been a busy year. I haven't counted.
So how do you find the time in 10 years to write over 100 and around 115 books when you're juggling not only your husband's, your ministry, you've had several moves within these 10 years. Yeah. Your kids have grown up. Your daughter is married. You have a grandbaby now. You know, you're another one on the way. How do you manage all that?
You know, I had some really great productive years where I got very little sleep. You know, I had been just publishing maybe the first few years I published 2 or 3 books a year, maybe 4. And then I picked up when it became the accepted wisdom that publishing faster would be better. I published that year, I think 7 or 8 books. And then the year that my husband left parish ministry, and I realized that it was going to fall on me to support us for at least while he was establishing the new ministry, I ended up writing 18 books between January and June of that year. And that was just a crazy, crazy, crazy time. But it was, it was good. And it's nice to have that backlist. You know, when I decide what I want to play with and what I'm going to do, it's really fun to do that. So this year, I say, I always talk about past Tawdra, future Tawdra, present Tawdra. And I'm very glad that past Tawdra did not, I had a trilogy release in April, which was the next set in my medical romance, the Diagnosis Love books. But then I really did not set anything else up. And I must have known that I was going to need this time between the move and the baby and everything else. So, the only thing that I have done this year, which has been super fun, and I've been having such a grand time with it, I have a series called Love in a Small Town that is 14 books long, and it takes place in a small town in Georgia, and it's probably one of my most popular small town series. And so I decided this year that every month of the year, with the exception of August, I would publish just a short that was based on that holiday. So we had New Year's, Valentine's, St. Patrick's, Easter, May Day, prom, 4th of July. Yeah. And then we have this coming in September, we'll have fall, Halloween, Thanksgiving and Christmas. So that's been really fun just to do those. And they're all set in this small town. And some of the characters from the other books make appearances and, pop in and out. And it's been a blast. I didn't know how it was going to be, but it's been fun. And they're short, but they're just kind of fun to play with. So yeah, the next one is due to come out at the end of September, but it's actually not going to come out until the beginning of October because of life, moving, and baby, and book or author conference, and all those things. So happily, I had not set a release date on it, but so yeah, that's been fun.
So you keep mentioning you go back and grab characters from other stories. So there must be characters that you totally fall in love with that you're like, no, their story's not ended. I want to bring them back to life.
Yeah.
Tell us about an author. How do you feel when you're creating these characters?
Oh, I am definitely a character-driven author. I don't necessarily think of a situation so much as I think of a person, or a person. A character becomes to me like a 3-dimensional flesh and blood person. That if a reader says to me, Megan from the last one, which was the first book in that Love in a Small Town series, what is she doing right now? And well, she has twins and they are just getting ready to start school, and she's really battling with whether or not she's going to go back to work because she's stopped and she married Sam, who's a farmer, and she's been working on the farm, and and I can tell you about all these things because for me they are real people. So yeah, I spend a lot of time thinking about a character before they actually go into a book. And I'm always a little surprised. They always bring me something that I didn't really realize was going to be the situation. I'm working on something right now that's going to come out next year. It's actually the longest book in my career, Soldier, which is my military romance series. And I did 8 of them set in Fort Lee, Virginia, which was the very first place my husband and I were stationed. And then this last series has been set at West Point, which is where my father went and my husband. So it's a really special place to me. So I've been writing some early chapters for this book that's going to come out next year, and I realized something about the male lead that it just hadn't even occurred to me, and it just made what's going to happen in the story so much more I was like, oh, okay, now I get why this happens this way,
Mm-hmm.
which it sounds weird, but that's just, that's how the mind works. That's how my mind works, at least. So yeah, it's fun.
So let's talk about, obviously if you're churning out books like that, do you have a writing schedule, or do you have, okay, I'm going to get as much as I possibly can get done today when nobody's around?
Yeah. I tend to not write. I try to write every day. Let's put it that way. But it's really hard for me to say, I'm going to sit down and write 3,000 words and then get up again. Because for me, once I'm in the groove, I really want to stay in it. And you have so much life going on. When I get up from my desk, I am dealing with a million other different things. So to get back into it, I have to reread. I have to kind of immerse myself back in that world. So I do tend to write a little bit, and then I plan out what my roughly what the chapters are going to be. I'm definitely a pantser, not a plotter. And then when I get to the end of it, I am probably writing between 10 and 15,000 words a day, just because I'm in that place. And, I've tried a lot of different ways to make myself start earlier. It just doesn't, it's just not my process. So, yeah, it works well. By the time I finish the book, I really feel like I am stepping out of a world and back into the real world. Not always happily either. So.
I love that. Not happily. Now, do you think that you will write a book that is like COVID based, where people are like having to, or do you think you're over COVID and you just don't want to put it in a book?
I had this is where I didn't have a lot of foresight. I had already planned my medical romance to come out last year. The first 3 books came out last year. And it was not the year to write medical romance. The stories were already written before COVID came about. So, I kind of toyed with the idea of, was I going to include it, and decided no. For me, one thing is that it would definitely cement those books in a specific time. And I did not want to do that. I tried to make, as much as I can, you're always going to have bits of technology that date your books. It's just the nature of our world now. But I decided not to do it. And then again, when the next 3 books came out this year, I made the decision again just to ignore it. At the time that it happened, we actually, when COVID was really hitting, we were driving from Florida to South Jersey to help my aunt and uncle move from the family farm. It's been in my husband's family for generations, to their new home. And we were talking about what would happen if we got stuck up there, because we have actually friends who live in North Carolina who were saying to us, once you get up there, you probably will not be allowed to drive back down through. And so that definitely did play in my mind. Like, what would this look like? What would happen if somebody, not me, but if somebody went someplace and got stuck somewhere with somebody? Well, let's say you had just met a guy, and this was your first in-person meeting, and COVID hits and nobody can get on an airplane and get back and whatever. So that's something that it's in the back of my mind. I don't have a definite plan to do it. And it may be that by the time I got around to it, nobody wants to read about that anymore. But not yet.
I love that. Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
So, I'm wondering, do you have any of your books with you? I know you're in the process of moving, but could you read a part of your book?
I actually do. I have this one right here. This is the Anti-Cinderella, which is actually related to the 50 Frogs book. 50 Frogs was supposed to be just a one-off, but I ended up coming up with the idea of this Anti-Cinderella, the young woman who is the least likely to become a princess, and she just happened to live in the same world as the 50 Frogs people. So this is the story of Kyra, who used to go to, she lived in Florida part of the year and in Philadelphia the other part of the year. But growing up, she used to go on beach vacations at her grandparents' house in Florida, and she used to play with this young man, this kid. He was 2 years older than her, named Nicky. And she didn't really realize it at the time, but as she got older, she did, that he was actually a prince. He's the grandson of the Queen of England. Not in direct line, not one of the William Harry kind of people, but this is, in my world, William and Harry have another set of cousins, okay, who don't really exist. So, but it actually is the real, Queen of England is what I based him on and his family on. And so she doesn't see him. She gets her first kiss from Nikki when she's 16 years old. And then she doesn't see him for years because she doesn't realize this is the last summer they're going to be together, because then he goes off and he's, being a prince and going to school and whatever. And when she meets him again, it's a surprise at her grandparents' house. And so that's, they end up starting to date, and it's the whole thing that you would expect with the press and the media and that kind of, that kind of fun thing, which I was a big Diana fan. Yes. So, that was my inspiration there. And I'm trying to find the part that I was going to. Okay. So one of the things that they always talk about is that they participated in a sand castle building contest, and they won it. And they talk about, whose talent it was won it, and he took the ribbon. So this is they're together. Back kind of in a secluded beach vacation right now, and trying to hide from the press. I totally disagree with you. I dug in my heels, both literally and figuratively, tunneling a double trench in the sand in front of me. I'm not going to try a British accent, just so that I don't do that. I have a couple of friends who are British, and they would not enjoy that. Kyra, love, you can't disagree with me when I'm presenting you with facts. Indisputable, non-debatable facts. Nikki used one finger to drag my sunglasses down so he could see my eyes as he spoke in his "I'll be patient if it kills me" voice. It took everything I had not to stick out my tongue at him. They are not facts. It's your opinion, and I'm allowed to think you're completely wrong. I pushed my sunglasses back up my nose. When you are. Uh-huh. Well, let's not debate the facts then. Let's talk about the results. Refresh my memory, sweetheart. Who won the sandcastle contest? I scowled. That's not relevant to this discussion. How is it not relevant? I believe it's actually the whole point. The contest was based on the structure of the sandcastle, and the judges were totally biased, obviously. I sniffed and crossed my arms over my chest. Wait a second. Now you're claiming that I won because of who I am? The judges gave me an unfair advantage because of my family? Nikki sounded slightly outraged, and I had the good grace to feel slightly guilty. Well, maybe, but maybe not. Probably not. I was positive the judges back then had given the first prize to Nikki because they all knew he was a prince. But I wasn't going to push this issue because I also knew how hard it must be for him, never being sure whether or not he had earned something on his own merit. I still think mine was the superior design. Yours was definitely prettier. Nikki brushed the hair out of my face, winding a curl around his finger. Your design choices made for a more attractive sandcastle. I'll concede to that. But it didn't win me any prizes. I didn't get the ribbon or the $10 gift certificate to the Five and Dime store. Yeah, it was petty, but even a decade later, the loss stung. Mostly because Nikki and I meant to enter the contest together that year, but our argument over strength versus visual appeal had ended that plan. I'm sorry, Kai. He murmured the apology against my neck, just below the lobe of my ear. I'm sorry that we didn't enter together. I'm sorry that you didn't win. Would you like me to see if I can find the ribbon so I can give it back to you? And I could take you down to the Five and Dime and let you pick out whatever you want. I tried not to shiver from pleasure, since now Nikki was nuzzling the crook where my neck met my shoulder. You're humoring me. I'm not going to fall for it. I'm not humoring you. I'm trying to make it up to you. I was a selfish, mean kid, and I should make it better. You weren't selfish or mean. I tilted my head to give him better access. You just thought you were right and that you knew better than me. The tip of his tongue darted out to touch my skin. Do you forgive me, Kai? I'll think about it, I sighed, smiling and letting my eyes close. Do you know how good it feels when you touch me? I know how good it feels when you touch me. Nikki drew me closer to his side. I can't believe the sun is setting already, and I can't believe I have to leave you tomorrow. Why does the time drag when we're together? Or why does the time fly when we're together and the time when we're apart drag on forever? I snuggled against him. If I had the answer to that, I'd solve it. I'd slow down our time. I'd slow down time for our days together and put it on fast forward whenever we had to be away from each other.
Wow.
So, and that little the ribbon plays into something that happens in the next book, and actually even the third book. So there are 3 books in that series so far.
So when you get a character and you start writing, do you think it's going to be a series, or is it just something that, okay, I'm not done with them yet, I'm going to write more?
In some ways, with this one, I definitely figured they would get to their happy for now, and it was okay. But then once I did it, readers said, well, but we want a wedding, we want this, we want that. So I did actually, as I drew to the end of it, I did plan out the next 2, and it has been fun. And actually, there will be, I thought that when I got to the end of the 3rd that it would be the end, but there's probably going to be 3 more in that. Plus there are little offshoots from this world of series that they will actually appear in. Nikki has 2 sisters who have stories, and Kyra's best friend, her book is actually one of the ones that's going to be coming out soon. So yeah, but I like to have my people come back and make little appearances. So yeah.
So they become real to you. They become part of your family, right? And it's like when you're reading the book, and it's nothing upsets me more as a reader is when you read the book and you're at the last page and you're like, it ended like that. Like, what happened? Like somebody's pregnant, or like, for instance, or even when you're watching a movie or TV show, like I'm a huge Heart of Dixie fan. I don't know if you watched it on Netflix.
Yes.
But at the very end, they don't tell the baby's name. They just end it where she's had the baby. And I'm like, what? People want to know these things.
I know. It is. It's so true. That always just made me crazy. But
So have you ever put a character down and then said, okay, their story's done, and then a little while later, you know what, their story's not done, and picked them back up and started writing about them again?
Yes, I think that in my Perfect Dish romance books, I wrote the first book. It was only, I always say in the beginning, I thought I was writing standalones, and I was wrong every single time, which is great because it's a better business proposition to write series. So the first book was called Best Served Cold, and it was about it's college age romance. And the main character has had a very bad breakup and is plotting revenge on the guy who humiliated her and broke up with her. But as I wrote the book, I knew that I was finished with the main character and her new love. Although I wasn't quite, but I was almost. And but I knew that I couldn't leave her roommate and the guy who had been the villain, who had done her wrong. I couldn't leave him. And I thought, nobody's going to like him. I have just spent an entire book making sure people hated this guy, but I know something that they don't know because it was not from his point of view. So there have been several more books about them. And a lot of people get to the end of the first book and say, I don't want to read the next ones because I hate Liam. And I always say, listen, read the next book. If you still hate Liam, I will give you your money back. That's fine. But just read it because it happens to be one of my favorite books. It's called Just Desserts. And it's actually one of my favorite books. And they are some of my favorite characters. So, and they have made some return appearances. I thought I was finished with them. And then I had readers wanting their wedding story, which was so much fun to write. So, and that's when the original characters came back too. So you just never know when somebody's going to pop up, it's just like life. You're just walking down and whoop, there they are.
There you go. I love the fact you've mentioned it several times in this interview, how you listen to readers' feedback. You give the readers what they want. A lot of authors are like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to give you what they want.
Well, I love my readers. I have a very close reader group, and my newsletter readers, the same thing. And so I really do pay attention to what they say. And even if it's just a few people, because I've had author friends of mine say, well, don't listen because people talk with their mouth, but they vote with their pocketbook. Mm-hmm. But you know what? For me, if it struck me enough, if a reader has said to me, I really would like to see this, and I can actually, like, it sparks something within me, it doesn't hurt anything to write that story. And it actually has been so much fun. I've never had a regret. I've never written something and said, oh gosh, I wish I hadn't written that. So, yeah.
I love that. Do you ever see your books making it on the TV or movie screens?
I had a couple of indications of interest a few years ago on some of my holiday stories, my Christmas stories, from somebody from Hallmark. I haven't really pursued anything there at this point, but although I am not usually a corny movie enjoyer, during Christmas, I have that, I have it on all the time. And I'm texting my girl saying, I'm watching this movie and you won't believe what he just did, or you won't believe what just happened. And they're like, oh dear. So yeah, I would love to see that. That would be, I have a couple friends who write for those and do them. And I would love to see it. When I was talking to Gail the other day, we were talking about casting for her books. So I have very strong opinions about that. Yeah. So it would be fun to do. It would be fun.
I love that. I obviously, you feel like you would want to be totally involved in that project because you want to make sure the characters are the way that you created them.
I would, but I know enough to know that, most of the time writers don't get a whole lot of input on that. So, I'm sure if I said, well, this is supposed to be based on somebody who looks like Chris Hemsworth, they may say too bad.
Too bad we can't afford him.
Yeah, exactly. Chris is too busy for you, but yeah. So
what is up next for you?
Well, for the rest of the year, I have the rest of my holiday serial or novellas will be coming out. I'm writing a serial right now in my newsletter that leads into the Christmas story, which has been fun. It's called Bosom Buddies. It's about 3 girlfriends who met in college when they were all working with a breast cancer organization. One lost her mother to breast cancer. One actually was a young survivor, and the third one came about it in a not so connected way. But that's been fun to write. So the third one will be, the Christmas one will be her story. And then the other 2 are being told in the serial. And that's been, it's a lot more romantic comedy than it is serious. And it's been super fun. Then I'll have another book coming out in the Career Soldier. That's called The Firstie. That will be out next year. The next book in the anti-Cinderella world, which is called A Dozen Dreams, and that's Shelby's story, will be out also next year. Other than that, I'm just, and I do have something else coming out next year in the anti-Cinderella world that is, it's actually a nanny story. So I'm involved in a multi-author world where we all write nanny stories. So it's going to be, she's a detective who goes to work for the royal family. So
the royal family again. There you go.
Well, it is. So I'm connecting it in with the anti-Cinderella book. So yeah. So that's about it. And I'm hoping that next year is going to be a less eventful year in my personal life, so I can do a lot more writing.
So how much research? Because you just talked about, you write paranormal, romance, soldier, career soldier, regular romance, erotica. How much research goes into writing these books?
A fair amount. The anti-Cinderella books were unique in that my youngest daughter went to a college in Maine called Unity, and her major was sustainable agriculture, and that came about. She was there at the same time that my husband was doing a community garden and also really throwing himself into sustainable farming, sustainable growing. And so we had all this discussion around us in our house about this, and it really sparked my interest. So in this anti-Cinderella books, Kyra, that's her field, is also sustainable agriculture. So I did a lot of reading and a lot of research into how what's going on? What are the innovations of the world? What are farming techniques that are being used in the UK and over here? And, what kind of charities might be and movements might be part of this world? And also the kickback, because I was surprised that after having written the book, I had not a lot, but I had a decent amount of kickback from readers who said, we don't believe in the idea of sustainable farming, and got very upset. And so that got written into the subsequent books, where they had protesters and people who were upset at them. So so that's been a lot of research there. And when I wrote the medical books, I did a lot of research, because the woman lead in that one, in the first 3, is a naturopath. So she's a doctor, but that is her field, is being a naturopath. So I've actually gotten on these mailing lists, and I go to webinars, and it's actually been something that I've enjoyed quite a bit, learning about just natural ways of healing. And so it's been fun. Yeah. I love research. I'm definitely, that's just making sure I don't get lost in it is the biggest thing.
So how do you go about publishing your books? Because I know that's a lot of, I've pretty much asked all the authors, and everybody has a different path within publishing.
Right. I've been independently published from the beginning. I was a hybrid author for a while, where my books, my paperbacks and some of my ebooks were with a traditional publisher. What I learned about that is that, my mother used to say, I don't play well with others. And she is right. I do better. I like to have, hold on. My computer, all of a sudden, the electronic person on my computer decided to play with me just now. I'm not sure exactly why. Anyway, so I am completely independently published. I like to have full control over covers and changing covers when I want to change them. I like to have information right away so that I can react to it. And I found that when I was going through a publishing company, that they would, if I needed information, if I needed numbers, reports, they would say, you'll have it in 4 to 6 weeks. Well, in this business, 4 to 6 weeks, it may as well be 4 to 6 years, because that's not going to help me. So I'm very happy to be publishing myself. And that way I can take the time when I need to. I can look at something and say, well, I'm moving, I'm having a new grandbaby, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. This is what's going to happen. This is where I am. And then when I have time, I can release a bunch of books when I'm ready. So it's my preference. So yeah.
So how do you go about being independently published?
Well, I have a lot of help. First of all, I do have proofreaders. I have a fabulous assistant who makes sure that I don't forget things. And I have a Stacy Ryan Blake is my formatter. So when I finish a book and it's gone through all of the editing and everything, I send it to Stacy, and she makes it beautiful. I have several covers. She does. She is just, as a matter of fact, let me try to see if I can. I mean, she just does. She'll do like the adorable little things, like you can see the break in the page there, and she puts in all these cute little things. I have several cover designers. Stacy does some of my covers. Meg Murray does others, and I've had a few other cover designers over the years. And so, I have the cover, I have the formatted copy, I choose a release date. Most of the time I have my books on pre-order, not so much lately, but I have in the past. And I have a launch plan that, involves promotion and advertising and all that stuff. So I do a lot of research into, what's the best practices are at the time. With my work with Novelist Inc., I've gotten to know a lot of super, super smart people in our industry who I can say, this is what I'm doing. What can I do to do it better? And they will give me advice, because they're all awesome people. That release the book, and usually I have a review team that puts up reviews on release day, and I upload it, make sure it's uploaded, and away we go. So yeah.
So you're specifically on Kindle, or is it print as well?
I'm wide. I'm on all markets. So I'm in Kindle, Apple Books, Kobo, Barnes and Noble, Google Play, a bunch of smaller presses, and my books are out in print, and a good many of them in audiobook too. So not all, but a good many.
Do you do the audiobooks as well, or does somebody else do those?
Oh no, somebody else does those. Yeah, I've toyed with the idea of recording my own, and there's some that I might at some point do, but it's wonderful to have somebody else do it right now. And I have some very, very talented narrators and producers who put them together. So they are awesome. And it's wonderful to just listen to it and go, oh, wow, I love this. I love this choice you made, or I love that choice. So yeah.
So I have another question for you. When do you find time to do all of this? Because it seems like it's a job and a half. You just said there was earlier in the interview, you said not a lot of sleepless nights or a lot of late nights.
Yeah, I tend to. I'm not a morning person. I'm definitely a late night person. So I tend to, when everybody else has gone to bed, I make sure everybody else is set, and then I usually work a couple more hours. It's changed a little bit in the last few years because I'm getting older, and I'm getting older and I need my sleep. So I try to balance it that if I'm up, say 2 or 3 nights really late, that I then give myself a break and sleep in a little bit. But, I just work hard when I know I have hard work that has to be done. And then I do take a break. I went through a lot of years in this business where all I did was work. And my son was 11 years old when I published my first book, and I homeschooled. So I was juggling homeschooling with that. And he, I would say he grew up in this business because he was going to book events with me. He was, a lot of authors who saw him turn 21 the other day said, oh my gosh, I remember when he would help me set up my stuff at a book event, or he took care of charging stuff and, technology. So now that I'm not homeschooling anymore, and there's, I actually feel like I have an immense amount of time. It's just, it's just working smart. And I've been trying to find more balance in the last few years. I've gone from, working every waking moment to saying I need to have a little bit of life too.
I love that. So tell people where they can find you at.
Well, I'm real easy to find if you just put in my first name, because I am the only Tawdra. I mean, back before I published, if you looked at my name, it was an Indian tribe, a Native American tribe that was called the People of the Beautiful Hair. And I always thought, wow, that's funny. My parents made up my name, so they did not get it from the Native Americans. But if you just look up my first name, you can find me anywhere. My website is up there. You have it there. I'm on Amazon, Apple Books, Kobo, Google Play, Barnes & Noble. I'm on Facebook, and my reader group is on Facebook. There it is right there, The Naughty Temptresses. They are all awesome. And I love that one, the TNTs. And my newsletter, I send out a newsletter every Friday, and that's where my serial that's running right now is in that. And I'm also on Instagram. I'm a little bit on TikTok. I started playing with that earlier in the summer, but I'm hoping that's one of my projects for this winter. So I'm there.
Thank you so much for agreeing and trusting me enough to come on and because I always send out talking points, but we never know where the conversation is going to go. And now I'm really wanting to read the Anti-Cinderella books, and I'm wanting to read a couple of the other books that you talked about, but I cannot remember. There was one book that I remember I created a thing for it. And it was a picture of my parents that talked about love. You remember that? And I cannot remember the name. Did you have one called The Lucky One?
No, I didn't have. I have one called The Last One, the last one, the first one, the only one, the perfect one. It was a picture of was it like I'm trying to remember.
My mom and dad, and it was talking about love. And I had taken a quote from your book, and you're like, I love that. I'm going to start doing that with my books.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I can't remember which one it was though. Now I'm gonna have to go back and look.
Yeah, we'll find it.
We'll find it.
We
Yeah,
will
we'll
find it. But guys, I would totally recommend any of her books. I mean, I've been a reader of hers for a long time, and it's just such a joy to have you on and just have this conversation with you. And hopefully next time you're in South Carolina at the signing, you normally go to Florence, right?
We usually stop in Florence, but yeah, we've been stopping anywhere from Florence to Fayetteville, because Fayetteville, on the way north, Fayetteville is actually a better stop for us. So
yeah, there's a great farmers market or brewery right off of 95 in Hope Mills near Fayetteville, and it's awesome.
Oh, well, the next time I go up, I'm going to make a note of that. And how are you close to that?
I'm like maybe an hour away from that.
Yeah, that might be a good meeting spot.
Yeah. I mean, they're open throughout the week, but on Sundays during the summer, they have a farmer's market as well. And they have a restaurant on thing. And the restaurant during the farmer's market will source out all the food from the farmer's market and create their menu on Sunday brunch from what they find at the farmer's market.
Oh, I love that. I'm a big fan of farmers market. I'm a big fan of farms because of, that's what my daughter does. My youngest daughter works on a farm in Fort Myers. She's the manager down there. So I love that idea. I was at a farmer's market this weekend and got lots of good stuff, and we've been eating well. So
I love that.
Yeah, I'll have to make a note of that.
So Tawdra, I want to thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your time and your story with us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to even meet you across the wire. The next time we'll have a conversation in person, and we'll talk about families and books, and
fingers crossed.
That's right. That's right.
So guys, I will put in the show notes everywhere you can find her, as well as, like I said, I just grabbed the link of where you can go to our author page on Amazon, because if I started listening to every book, we've probably been here forever. But so thank you so much again for coming on. And guys,
thank you for having me.
Be blessed. And most importantly, remember, keep chatting. Have a great day, guys.